I've got the survey module set up on the Midlands community platform. It can be set up on any platform. It's not currently on all platforms. It needs to be turned on. So if you'd like to use it when we're all done, feel free to speak to Mark or I, and we can get it running on your platform. What I'm going to go through today is I'll talk a little bit about how to create a survey, and then I'll talk about how to get results and how to analyze the data. But it's not intended to be a completely end-all, rundown on how to operate this. So if it's something you feel you're going to utilize in the future, Mark or I would be happy to go through it in more detail with you, or we'll also get something out there to get you some more information on actually how to build a survey. So some of what I'll do today, I might be glossing over some technical pieces, but I'd like to keep it, moving forward and not really get into the real nitty-gritty with everyone on the line today. And we can focus on the nitty-gritty if people are actually going to, start using it and putting it out there in the real world. We'll be happy to tighten things up with you. So what we have in front of us now on the screen is what's your survey page. Here you can come to see all your, any active surveys that you're running, and you can create new surveys. What's here now is just a test survey that I've stood up, and we'll create a new one while we're here. We'll work through the system a little bit. The survey name is used in the URL, so you should use something that's pertinent. The surveys can be pretty much anything you want. I know a focus going forward has been needs assessment, but it can be most anything. I think I'll talk at the end about some different ideas on how to use this, but I'll show you what this is first. So if we want to create a survey, and maybe we'll call it, fall 2015. The survey currently can be in English or Spanish. You enter all the text, but the difference in the two right now is really just some of the punctuation. It puts the upside down question marks and that sort of thing. And then also each survey can have a map on it, which allows the survey taker to geolocate the person taking the survey, which is very valuable. And again, I'll talk about that in data analysis at the back end. But if we can geolocate, especially something like a needs assessment, then we can look at mapping and tying it into indicator data and stuff like that later. So we'll create a new survey for fall of 2015. And now we have right here, we have a blank survey that we need to add questions to. So we'll create our first question. Here are the different question types. Again, for the sake of moving forward, I'm not going to delve into all the nitty-gritty here. Suffice to say, it covers a lot of the basic, survey type of style of questions. Again, if there's questions in the end or in the future and you'd like to get into some of the nitty-gritty here, I'd be happy to. Let's just say first question is, we will say, what is your gender? Active, there is no parent, and we're going to make them select one. That creates the question. Now we have a question and we need to create answers for it. So it would be male. Or female. And it may not be politically correct for today. I'm going to stick with male and female. And that's it for this question. So now we can go back to our list of questions. Here's our one question. It is active. It's ready to go. If we want to create another question, I'll do that. I'll create another different type. Let's say a drop-down box with numbers 0 through 10 in it. And let's say how many children under 18 in your household? And there we go. So now we have these 2 questions in our survey. Now I am going to go to look at our survey on the front end. This is the link we would give to somebody to take the survey. So you could distribute this URL. Again, we can talk about some of the use cases of this. I know Emily can touch on that too. They use this at certain events and conferences with iPads at the door. And had people taking their surveys. I believe they were doing some needs assessments. I know they did some canvassing out in the neighborhoods, again with iPads, that sort of thing. This is very focused on mobile friendly. As you can see, my screen's a little wide here. If I shrink my screen up, this will go with it. The question presentation is definitely geared towards a phone or mobile friendly. But again, we selected a map, which I'm excited about because from a data perspective, if we can gather geographic information that we can tie the answers to that, we can map it, we can do all kinds of things with it in the future. So for confidentiality, when we do display the map, we ask them to not put in a home address, as you can see up here. It's just something, you know, is close to where you are is comfortable. So, and then here's our questions. So I can say, you know, this, and there's 1 child. And again, if we had 50 questions, they would click through them. With this next button, you know, if there was, you know, whatever, it goes right through the whole thing. And this is what the user gets when they finish a survey. This here, they get a confirmation number. Again, this was developed, and Emily can talk about her usage out in the field. There were instances where they were at certain events, and you know they would query people to do the survey prior to entering the event, and then they would actually need to give this confirmation number to enter the event, stuff like that. So we give them a confirmation number. And then if you go back to our surveys, you'll see that my fall of 2015 has 1 response. And then we can go to this page and view all the results. So these are all the compiled results of our survey. You can see it's just our 1 response on it. And then there's also an export feature that would export all the responses that you've got into a CSV file, which then can be opened in Excel or any of those standard programs. You can do, you know, any type of data analysis via that export. It could be imported into a database of your own choosing if you'd like, and have, I know they worked with the University of Georgia that did some of their data analysis. So we exported to CSV and then passed it off to the data folks at the university, and they were able to do their analysis with that. So I guess that covers the general idea of what the survey does. I want to talk just briefly, and I think Emily can go a little further, about some of the use cases. I mentioned the map. I'm very excited that some of this data, especially if you focus on say, use of a needs assessment, that you can geolocate the answers. You know, what I've showed you is what's currently built out. But by geolocating the answers, we could then have the ability in the future to map them. You could then compare your data, which is your, you know, bear in mind, this is like local live data. We know it's really good data. They've canvassed the neighborhood. They spoke to real people. It's not, you know, it's not a census estimate. It's real live data. So to be able to compare that to, say, census data on a map, overlay maybe, you know, demographics or poverty or whatnot with this data, and then to take it a step further, if you were doing a needs assessment and you had a section on, say, hunger. I know Athens, they had a section on, you know, had you visited a soup kitchen, recently? Have you had hunger issues in your family? That sort of thing. If you then geolocate that data on a map, you could do a gap analysis and then look at your services in the area. We have a lot of, show a lot of hunger in our assessments in this neighborhood, and there's no soup kitchens in the neighborhood. We have the soup kitchens in our system as resources, and I can map them. So someone needs to go out there and pound the pavement and maybe talk to the local churches to, hey, can we have a need for soup kitchens in this neighborhood? That sort of thing. So I think that's a big key, is to be able to geolocate and to be able to customize it. So you can customize this. You folks can come in here and build a survey. You can promote your own survey. You can stand it up. You can get it out there. I know Emily has surveys with thousands of responses. That's good, solid, valuable data on her local neighborhoods. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now. If not, I'll turn this over to Emily and ask her to say a few words on how they use this in the real world. And if there are any questions in the future going forward, or you want me to get this turned on so you can play with it on your platform, again, please contact Mark or myself, and we'll be happy to get into further details, roll up our sleeves. Emily?
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak on behalf of how we've used it, which has been pretty incredible. I'll introduce just kind of a little bit about the organization. So we're an organization called Community Connection, and we existed previous to the platform as a nonprofit operating the local 211 information and referral helpline. That's actually the primary reason that we picked up the platform. But then as time went on, we also picked up a contract with our 2 local hospitals to do their community health needs assessment, which, if you're unfamiliar, there's a new IRS requirement under the Affordable Care Act that says that each nonprofit hospital has to do a community health needs assessment every 3 years in order to maintain their nonprofit status. And so they contracted with our organization in order to do the needs assessment, and as a part of that contract, we were required to get, or we told them we would get 2,000 population health surveys. And health for us was defined not only the normal physical health needs that we think of, cardiovascular health and cancers and diabetes and those sorts of things, but we also broadened it with a group of professors and community members to ask about mental health services, access to care, transportation issues, etc., such that the responses that we got to the survey would not only be able to inform the community health needs assessment, but could also inform just community-wide planning and priorities on an ongoing basis. So I'll just be really specific about how we used the surveys. So we developed a health survey in partnership with the university and put it up on the platform. And we had a number of community events and focus groups as a part of the requirement for our needs assessment. And so we held 2 large pig roasts with about 500 people in attendance at each, and then we hosted a large fireworks show on July 3rd that had about 700 attendees. And at each of those events, the requirement for entrance, or their fee for entrance, was a completed household survey. So we kind of accomplished people doing the survey in 2 ways. One was people could come up to the event and complete the survey on an iPad or on their mobile device. And we had a number of volunteer teams from local churches and organizations who helped guide people through the survey. And so that was the one way it was accomplished. Another was we had the option for individuals to complete the survey beforehand, and then, as Rob suggested, they showed us the verification code at the entrance, and we had volunteers who could enter the verification code, and they would be checked off in the back of the system such to prevent duplication. And in that way, it made an extremely streamlined system, and also just gave us the ability to get a really wide sample of individuals who otherwise could not be tapped into. And at the end of it, we did get over 2,000 surveys, and after exporting them and sending them off to the UGA, the University of Georgia's public health, School of Public Health, and also School of Geography. We did have a representative sample, and we're able and are continuing to be able to make statements about need in our community. I'll talk about 3 specific examples just to let everyone know. The food bank is using the data, some of the questions we asked about food insecurity. They're using that data to determine where their next mobile food pantries will be opened. The local, one of our mental health clinics is looking to open a satellite location, and so with the data they're determining where that location might be. And then lastly, and this would be the most obvious, is the hospitals are required to use the data to determine where their local programming, their community benefits programming is what it's called in the IRS requirements, where they will continue to focus in the future. So we're really excited, and community members are extremely engaged with the process because it was so public and because we did it at such large community events, and also we're being asked weekly to come and present on the data that we found. And so it's an incredible opportunity to engage with community members and also to get data that's hyper-local and neighborhood focused. We're looking to enter into a contract with our local school system who's switched to a neighborhood schools model where the attendance zones for each of the elementary schools serve as true neighborhoods, and so we'll eventually be looking to collect survey data that we can hyperlocate to neighborhood schools to figure out what school resources are present and how we can continue to develop those over time. So yeah, it's an incredible tool and very simple and user-friendly. What Rob has showed you, it really is that simple. And being able to export the data, and for the individuals at the university or whoever you might have that's a statistician, it definitely was not me, who's able to work with the data, just makes it really easy to get that information. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Of course, if anyone has questions about how it worked or how we used it, I'd also be happy to answer them. But I think that's all I have for now, Rob.
Great. Thanks, Emily. I appreciate your time.
Yeah,
I'm going to turn this back over to Mark.
I had some questions. This
Sure.
is Susan from Shreveport, Louisiana. When you said you had people at the events completing the survey, did you just have a tent with tablets and volunteers that held on to the tablets so that they wouldn't leave the event? I mean, how did you set that up?
Right. Okay. So this is, yeah, it kind of was a challenge. So we did some of the events in the summer, so we absolutely needed to have tents for shading issues. But then we also had tables set up. So each volunteer was assigned a particular iPad, which had an ID number on the back. And at the beginning of the event, volunteers had to sign their name saying, "This is the iPad. I'm in charge of this iPad. If I lose track of this iPad, it is my responsibility." So in that way, there's accountability that says you volunteer are now in charge of this iPad. No one can walk away from it. But yeah, we set up tents so that people could see the screens, and then we also had the ability for some older adults to be able to sit down. And then as backup, we also printed paper versions of the survey in case people were just uncomfortable using the iPad.
Did you have a lot of people use the paper surveys?
You know, I would say about 10% of the people, not many. And then we had one of our partners at the university was willing to have her interns input all of those surveys for us. The only challenging part, what we did to account for the mapping feature is we added a question that just said, can you please name the intersection, the names of the 2 roads closest to your house? And that way, that was probably the most challenging part of doing paper surveys, was having volunteers.
How many iPads did you have, or was it just one person per iPad, one volunteer per iPad? Or?
Yeah, so it was 1 volunteer per iPad, and we had 30 iPads at each event, and that was only made possible because our local school district, the superintendent signed off that we are able to borrow the iPads that we have at school. So it was truly a community-wide effort to even pull it off. But yeah, we have a couple in our office, but we needed all 30 of those at the events.
Wow.
So they allowed you just to borrow 30?
Yes, they did.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it was wonderful, yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah. It was.
Are there any? Yeah. Are there any other questions?
Just
one other question. So how much does it cost to put on a pig roast?
Oh gosh. Well, we so again, we worked with a local farmer who raises and slaughters pigs. I'm sorry for any vegetarians in the house. But we so we got a discounted price, and also it was local, so that made it a little bit cheaper. We had a lot of help from local restaurants who donated a lot of food. So the price tag we put on it was $2,500, and it was all actually ended up being all nonprofit organizations who sponsored the event. So our local community foundation, a local church, and then one of the hospitals ended up sponsoring each of the pig roasts and then the fireworks show. And so yeah, the price tag was $2,500, and I think the fireworks was obviously the most expensive of the ones, but yeah, it was also made possible with a lot of volunteer hours, which, I mean, the value of that would be even more than that.
Right. Well, I mean, that's a very low cost by survey standard.
Right, of course, and it was also part of the collection was included in our contract with the hospital. So when that's taken into account, perhaps it was a little bit more. And plus, all my emotional turmoil and all of my time and stress. So however much that is worth.
Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Of course.
Mark, you want to move things along?
Sure. Yeah, I will. Thank you, both to Rob and Emily. And if questions come up afterwards, you can ask them at the end of the webinar or send them along to me, and I can pass them along because it certainly is interesting and seems like it could have applications for a lot of our other partners. I am going to proceed now to the second topic, which is hopefully, hopefully you can see my screen. And I'm going to go over marketing strategies that we could be using to promote our community platforms. The first section of what I'll present is one way that you might put together a marketing strategy. And at the end of it, I'll talk about how social media might be used in that marketing strategy. And feel free to interrupt me with questions as I go along. And my disclaimer on this is that, especially when I start talking about social media marketing, that area, a lot of these areas are really dense. I'm going to do a brief overview, and we can ask questions if there's a specific topic that a lot of people feel needs more attention that you're really interested in. We could do an entire webinar on Google Analytics. We could do an entire webinar on using Facebook for your community platform. So I'm going to definitely be skimming over topics, but I think hopefully this will present a more full picture of how you could be promoting your platform. This is the very general outline, and we'll go through each of these in more detail. Sorry about the amount of text on each of these. The way that I would start out is trying to outline what your goals are for your platform. And for a lot of our partners, when we first meet to talk about the community platform, and I prompt our partners to talk about this. So some of you have probably already heard me ask these questions. A lot of the decisions that you made while setting up your platforms, are we going to do volunteer opportunities or not? Are we going to use the library or not? These all could have been made or should have been made towards your goals for your platform. But if you don't have them already, or if you never really quite wrote them down, I think this is a good time to do it, because figuring out how you're going to market your platform, it should tie into your organization's mission and your goals for your platform. So your goals should be specific. I think that's really important. I think that a mission statement is allowed to be general, but your goals and your marketing goals should be really specific. And lastly, the goals should be, I think all of them should be ideally, but at least most of them should really be quantifiable and trackable. You should be able to know whether you're reaching your goals. And I think, you know, I'm probably over-explaining something that's already obvious, because if you work in a nonprofit, you're always working on where your funding is coming from. So being able to quantify how successful you've been in the last year is an important part of your job anyway. So maybe this will be helpful, because we'll talk about some ways to track your progress towards your goals. So I gave some examples here at the bottom of the page. If you have the goal of helping people in need, that's very lofty, but it's not so easily trackable. Although, as we just talked about with the survey and the needs assessment, certainly that would be one way of tracking how things are going in the community, but it's a little bit harder to say, we sent out this marketing campaign and look, there's less people who are hungry today. I think that would be a hard connection to make. If your goal was to increase the number of visitors on the platform, that's very trackable, and it is something that it's tangible and you can test it, and maybe it is part of your mission, but you should make sure that that's not just an arbitrary number that you're working towards. The last one is the example that I'll go through in the next few slides. If your goal was to increase the number of volunteer listings posted on the site, that obviously wouldn't be your only goal for the platform, but that might be one of your goals in this marketing strategy. You know, maybe you found that there's a need for that. Maybe your organization has decided that there's a niche that you really want the platform to fill, and that's being a volunteer center. You could have any number of goals, and I think having any number of specific goals is more helpful than having just one or two very broad goals, specifically when you're trying to figure out how to implement those goals and how to get there. Whoops, let me get to the next slide. And so also, if I worked with you when you set up your platform, another thing you'll probably remember me saying is, I think it's important to figure out from the onset who it is that you're trying to reach. Because the language that you use and the methods that you use are going to change. If you're trying to reach funders and philanthropists or legislators, that's one set of users that you might have one set of methods to reach. But if you're trying to reach people in need who are looking for services, you're probably going to use different methods, different language, different images in your message. And so I think it's important to concretely lay out in a bulleted list, or however you want to do it, figure out who those people are that you want to reach each of those goals. I think of it as very concrete, and I think the more concrete you can get it and the more specific, that'll help you figure out how you're going to, what your strategy will be to market the platform. And so I gave some examples here. If we're using the goal from the last slide of increasing volunteer listing postings on the site, then one group of target users might be nonprofit staff members. That's true, and that is helpful, and they are the users who you want to reach, because they'll be posting, that their organization needs volunteers. But again, it's broad. If you can break it down to a few specific groups, that might be helpful. Reaching out to religious organizations specifically, that's our goal for this month or this week or this year. I think that having worked with a number of different platforms, the ones that have the most success are the ones that focus on a subset. I'm thinking specifically, Susan Campbell, and maybe you can speak to this at the end, in Northwest Louisiana, has had success with reaching out to very specific community groups like religious organizations or libraries. I know New Mexico, I don't think anyone is on the call from New Mexico, but they started their platform reaching out to specific groups, people who work in early childhood, for example. So that doesn't mean the platform itself is only geared to those groups, but having something specific, making progress and having success to show, and then building on that, I think would be a part of a more successful overall strategy than starting out so broad and then having trouble being able to show that you've made any success because the group that you're looking at is just so big. So there are many different ways to track your progress, and I'm going to look at two different ones. Tracking progress can happen on the community platform, and we have some reporting capabilities already built out. Right here is a screenshot of the classified statistics page from Share New Mexico. And this is sort of a generic one that is available on all platforms. If you go to the admin link, and then on the right-hand side, there's a link that says classified statistics. More specifically, if you were putting together a targeted campaign, we could work with you to create a customized report. So we could create a graph that would show you the number of new volunteer listings added week by week, for example. We can work with you, and set that up according to your specific campaign. That's always an option. And Google Analytics is, sort of the gold standard, I think, according to a lot, at least the free gold standard of analytics and tracking progress on sites. It's, like I said at the beginning, it's a complex tool. It's very powerful. I have here a couple of screenshots just to give you an idea of what's available. Google Analytics is enabled and set up for all platforms when we first turn them on. If you've never accessed yours, just shoot me an email and I can give you permissions to access it and help you find it. I would suspect that I know that there's a lot more than we can cover here, but I'll just show you a couple of screenshots. This is one area of Google Analytics that shows visitors by city. So if I know a conversation that happens a lot in New Mexico for our Share New Mexico partners. They talk a lot about making sure that they're not too focused on the main cities in their area, because cities tend to have the most nonprofits and the most focus anyway. So if you wanted to make your goal to increase the number of visitors that are coming from non-urban areas, this would be one way that you could track that. And I know that this is not, ironclad. There's certainly, I don't think that every single user is tracked 100% correctly, but I think that this does give you an idea of where your users are coming from. This is a screenshot from another area of Google Analytics that shows where your visitors are coming from. So this, I'm not sure that this would be a part of a goal, but it does give you some interesting information. If your goal involves social media, then you would want to see the number of people coming that are referred by social media sites, which is the bottom yellow. You want to see that number go up. And this is just the most broad page. You could click on organic search and see how people are finding your site. And maybe that will, maybe seeing what keywords people are using to find your site will give you an idea of who your users are. And maybe you want to play more to those users, or maybe you want to make sure that you're focusing your energy, your time and energy towards bringing in other types of users. I think there's a wealth of information if you can take the time to digest it here. I sort of talked about this, but this is just some types of information that is, trackable and might be part of your goals that you can get from Google Analytics. The number of visitors per site or per page, the length of stay, how long people are staying on your site, and that's important. If you have millions of visitors who stay for 4 seconds, that's probably not helping you reach your goals. If your numbers are going down, if you're doing a lot of targeting advertising and you're finding that the number of people coming to your site is not going up, but the amount of time they're spending on the site is going up, that is still very successful. I think people have really short attention spans, so if you might notice, people are not spending enough time, maybe we need to put more pictures, maybe we need to put a video, maybe we need to do something to engage people, because clearly either they're not finding what they're looking for, or we're making it, too difficult, something like that. So you can learn a lot from this type of information. I've gone through, I think I did it in a past webinar, I mentioned this, but I know we've looked at it with specific platforms, studying where users are clicking on a page. Maybe you'll find that there's a certain item on your navigation bar that just never gets clicked, and maybe you want to think about taking that link down and put up another link and see if people find that more interesting, or change the name. Maybe classifieds is not the right title because sharing and volunteering would get more people to click that link. So that's the kind of testing that you can do. And the last thing is, and this is sort of an advanced feature of Google Analytics, but it is powerful, is we have the ability to set up custom events. An event is what you call it in Google Analytics when a user does something specific. So by default, Google Analytics will track when someone lands on a page, but there are a lot of things that people do on the page. So for example, if you had a goal of having people use the map more or using it more in depth, we could, instead of just tracking how many times people land on the map page, we could set up a specific event of tracking how many times they actually click the Map It button. So you know if someone is doing it 10 times, they're viewing 10 different maps, or are they just looking at one. So there's a number of other things. You could track how many times someone presses express interest on a classified listing. And maybe your goal is you don't just want more people to come to the classified section, you want more people to express interest. So that would be a custom event, and you'd have to work with us to do that, but we have done it before, and we'd be happy to work with you on making sure that we're tracking the right piece of information for you through Google Analytics or through the community platform. Both are options. I know that I'm sort of moving quickly. Does anyone have any questions on what I've talked about so far? Okay, I will continue. So with the three pieces that we just talked about, the goals, the users, and the tracking, you would then make a plan for how you would connect those. So the bottom, this is my example plan. I'm going to send targeted email campaigns to religious groups within such and such county, encouraging them to post volunteer opportunities. I'm going to send 2 to 3 emails. I'm going to use MailChimp as just an example of one way to do it. And we're going to track our success by looking at the number of click-throughs. That means how many people, after opening the email, actually click on the link and view the site, which MailChimp can track. I'll show that on the next screen. And we're also going to track the number of new volunteer listings. So hopefully between those two numbers, we can learn a little bit about whether we've been successful towards reaching our goal. In case you haven't heard of MailChimp before, Constant Contact is another tool that people use. They're both powerful tools, and I'm sure there's a lot of other that I'm less familiar with, for sending out emails to lists of email addresses, people who have asked for more information or signed up, or maybe you've engaged with them in some other way at an event. And so this is one way of reaching out to people. And MailChimp specifically, I think it's my next slide here, MailChimp offers sort of like analytics or reporting on your emails after you send them out. So for example, this is actually the email that we sent to remind people about this webinar. This was the first one to save the date. So we had a 43% open rate. So 43% of the people we sent this to actually opened it. And we had a click-through rate of 15%. So, that sounds small, but I actually think in the world of email marketing, 15% sounds pretty high. Open rate of 43 also sounds high. So I think that you could learn a lot, especially if you were sending out 3 emails over the course of a month. Then you could compare the numbers, and maybe you can tweak the subject line and see, oh, I should have used this word. This word is more engaging, or this title is more interesting than that one. So there's a lot that you can learn. Here. So the last step is, after you've put your strategy or a specific plan in place, you track your progress. And I think that I don't think that you can be too scientific about it, if that's the right word to use. I just gave some example numbers here that I made up, and that would be according to the goals and the strategy that I outlined on the last couple slides. We sent out 3 emails on 3 different dates, and we tracked the number of click-throughs, which is the number of people that clicked on the campaign, on the email campaign to go to the site, the number of weekly visitors, and the total number of postings per site. So you can, per week. And so you can see whether you're being successful or not successful in your campaign, and hopefully, tweak and change your marketing strategy going forward according to what's working. Let's see what's next here. So before I go on to social media, just to check again, does anyone have any questions? I'll certainly open it up to sort of more of a roundtable discussion in a couple minutes. But does anyone have any questions on anything that I went through? It's always a little scary to get complete silence, but I'll hope that's because I've left you speechless and amazed. Next, I'm going to go on to how to use social media. Again, this is a huge, huge area. I focus more on Facebook than other platforms, and I'll just try to give a very broad strokes of how social media can be used to integrate into the strategy that I just outlined. So in general, social media, Facebook, etc., are used to build an audience or a community around your organization. And how social media can fit into your strategy, there's really two different ways. In general, it can be used to spread awareness. So you just want more people to hear about your community platform. You want to send out messages, that say, oh, look what you can do here, look at this map, or look at this interesting classified listing, and you're just trying to raise awareness, which can be a goal. Increasing the number of likes on your Facebook is definitely a goal that some people would have for their social media account. But I'll talk a little bit later as to whether that's always the right goal for, in all cases, because I don't think it always is. And the second is that instead of your social media account being the goal, it can just be a strategy used to reach a goal. So if the goal is, again, new volunteer opportunities, then Facebook can be one of the ways that you're hoping to reach your target audience. So for example, if your target audience is younger people or people who are more tech savvy, compared to if you were trying to reach the elderly community, maybe using Facebook is not the best approach, although I think that's changing over time. But that can be another use for social media, is as a tool instead of as the end goal. Here's just a brief outline of how you might use Facebook to promote your platform. If you don't have anything at all yet, if you don't have a page yet, getting started is as simple as creating a page. You have to have an account. So you have to sign up for Facebook under your own name, and then you can create a page. I think that's how you do it. You would add photos and content, your website, your the URL to the platform, a short description, some information like that. And then using social media, you are starting out with your own social network. So in order to launch a brand new page, you're asking your colleagues to like it and to share links to it. You're asking your family and friends even, because that is really how a social network starts out. And obviously you're hoping to branch out well beyond that social network, but that is really the way to get started. So to build from there, you want to grow your network. I'm using organically, and organically specifically is as opposed to paying to advertise, which we'll talk about in a minute. You grow your network by posting interesting information as your status updates, and you're competing with a lot of other things out there, so you want to try to use engaging language. You want to use images and videos that people enjoy a little bit more than long phrases. I know that Facebook marketing moguls are always talking about engagement, but that's what you're trying to do. You don't just want someone to read your status and enjoy it. You want them to like it, or you want them to comment, and you want them to share it. So the reason that you're trying to get people engaged, other than just the fact that you want them to, other than the fact that you want them to be engaged with your platform, is the way social medias work, and specifically the way Facebook works, is that you post a status, and anyone who's liked your page will see it, and that's your first wave. That's the first wave around the pebble that you threw in, and so people who have liked your page see it. If you get 4 people to comment on it, so instead of saying, look at this map of hunger in our area, you say, wow, like if you want to end hunger in our community, or share this map if you think we could be doing better to battle hunger in our community. So using engaging language. So if 4 people like it or comment or share it, the post that you just wrote will show up on all of their friends' news feeds. So you've increased exponentially the amount of people that are being exposed to your organization and your status. That's the reason for trying to engage people. I think one mistake that people do often on Facebook is they post, but they're not quite using the right language to invite people to engage. So people see it and they read it and they move on, instead of sharing it, or people say a lot, ask questions when you're posting on Facebook to invite people to answer, because when they answer, you end up broadening your audience. The last thing here says make a plan and stick to it. And that's important, because I think starting a Facebook page, you can have lofty goals about how you're going to update it every day. But if you treat it the way people treat their own personal social media accounts, when I think of something, I'll open it and get to it, I think very easily we could end up busy with our other work-related tasks, and a month has passed and we haven't shared anything, and your social media network has sort of gone a little cold. So I think that it makes sense that if this is a part of your marketing strategy, you make a plan, and that plan might be once a day, I have to post something on my organization's Facebook page, and I put it on my calendar that at 10 a.m. I have to spend 10 minutes and I think of something to post. Even though that might sound sort of counterintuitive to the freewheeling, fun way that people use Facebook socially, I think when you're using it as a business or as a nonprofit, I think that you need to be a little more calculated about it to make sure that it doesn't drop off your to-do list. That's what I've recommended to people in the past.
I'd also, if I can interrupt, Mark, this is Tom.
Sure.
If there's particular content you're interested in posting about, let us know. There might be some national stories we can feed out to you. Another approach is to get an intern who could help you create content, maybe on, what partner organizations or what nonprofit organizations in your community are up to. That's another approach. We'd be glad to extend the conversation on that.
Right, and that actually brings up a point that I sort of missed, which is that you don't have to be overwhelmed that every day you have to come up with a new and exciting and completely unique idea to share on your Facebook page. That would take a lot of time, and you would probably be the only person on Facebook who wasn't just sharing other things. So I think it's valuable that maybe you follow all the other nonprofits that are working in your area, and once a day you pick one of those nonprofits and you highlight it and you share what they said. If they posted something interesting about what they're doing, a project that they worked on, pictures from some volunteer opportunity that they had last week, you can share their content to your own audience, and that's a totally okay thing to do, and it saves you time and it builds your network wider. They see that you're sharing their content, etc. It's not plagiarism, it's just how social media works. And so the last thing I want to cover here is just that paid advertising is also a big part of how social media works. And specifically, I think I include this on another slide, but specifically I started out by saying that you create your page and you'll base it on your own social network, because that's just how Facebook is built. But to go beyond your own social network, which is definitely your goal, there are a number of ways to do it. And one is to do all the things I said and post content. And another way is to pay there's two different ways that I outline here, but is to pay money to Facebook to increase your reach, increase your audience. So paying to boost your status is when you post a status, it doesn't automatically show up on every single person's page who's liked. It might show up on 50% of the people who have liked your page. If you pay to boost it, it will show up on more people's news feeds. So you're basically just saying, I want more people to see this and I'm willing to pay for it.
And you can also specify keywords.
Right. Well, I know you can with targeted advertising. Can you also specify keywords with paying to boost?
Oh, I guess I've just used Facebook with honestly, I don't recall what they called the Facebook advertising, but I thought it was the general. Their default option was to let you specify some interests or keywords. Right.
And I know that you can do that, and that's a big part of their targeted advertising. So the ads that you see either on the side of the page or promoted ads that you see in the middle of the page, you can get really nitty-gritty with who it is that you're paying to see those advertisements. So back to picking our target users for your goals, if your goal is to engage more people below the age of 30, you can do some targeted advertising and specifically say that you want people to see your ad who are below the age of 30 and have interest in volunteering. for example. So that you would pay Facebook, and they would do the work of figuring out who to show it to. That's a big part of how they've made a lot of money, and it is very effective. This is just a screenshot of what it looks like from the back end. This is a Facebook page of another organization, actually not related to the community platform, but I just wanted to show what it looks like. They also offer a lot of analytics. Once you have a certain number of likes, they will show you how you're doing, how your last 5 posts have done. Are they reaching as many people as you'd like? Are a lot of people seeing it but not being engaged by it? Going back to that ultimate goal of engaging people. So they give you a lot of tools built into your Facebook page. This is a really brief overview. I just wanted to mention other social media platforms, but I didn't want to go into them in general. Honestly, I'm not even going to, because I'm going a little longer than I thought I would here. I wanted to briefly mention that there are limitations to social media marketing. Certainly, if anyone has tried it, you'll find that there is an investment of time, if not money, and there's a bit of a learning curve just to getting used to it if you're new to it. Like I said before, if you're not paying, your audience is limited to your own social network. So that's, it's not necessarily a limitation. Lots of organizations use Facebook and don't pay, but that is a limitation. And lastly, I just got this tidbit happens to be my sister works in PR for a nonprofit, and she's struggled with this, that because Facebook is actually for profit, over time, once you become popular enough, they actually limit your audience, how many people see each post, in order to encourage you to pay. So, what she told me was that unless you have a specific amount of budget that you want to spend, you should make sure that you're not completely limiting your marketing to something like Facebook. You want to be using Facebook to bring people to your website to sign up for your newsletter, for example. So making sure that you're not investing too much unless you know that you have the money and want to continue to spend the money. And lastly, this is not quite a limitation, but it's worthwhile saying just because Facebook is popular doesn't mean that it's necessarily worth making it an end in and of itself as a goal. Make sure that it fits into your goals somehow, which I think I've gone over. And here are some sort of other marketing strategies that tie in, some with Facebook and some with just the other goals that we talked about. In-person networking and outreach is, inestimable, if I'm saying that word right, compared to Facebook. It's the warmth of a handshake and a conversation, and sitting down with someone and doing a community survey face to face is going to build their trust in your community, I think, a lot more. So it's more time intensive, maybe more money intensive, probably is, but don't write it off. Monthly newsletters and making sure that you're always bringing people into your subscriptions list is important, and a way to always be reaching out. And it doesn't cost money, but is the most targeted you can be compared to Facebook targeted ads. And the last is community partnerships, which I think probably a lot of people on this call could talk about with more experience than I can, but I think it's important. Have next. So this was intended to open it up. I didn't realize quite how long I would be talking, and I know that we set this as an hour. So I know that some people might have to go. If people have 15 more minutes, we can stay on the call and hear what you think about what I've just presented. If you have to go, thank you for your time. And does anyone who still can stay on the call another few minutes have any thoughts on what I just presented as a marketing strategy?
This is Susan in Louisiana again. I've been using Facebook, and I actually just recently went to a social media workshop to develop a Twitter account and decide how I'm going to then push it out in our community. But Facebook's been really interesting because what I found, what I was told about our region of Louisiana is that Facebook is still dominant. Where in other areas you may have more Twitter, Instagram, and I thought that was interesting. And I'm middle-aged now, so what may appeal to me as a middle-aged person may be different than 20-something. So it's what you talked about just really went with that, with the other workshop I just went to. In terms of targeting age, and what's been interesting is when I do Facebook advertising, there is an older population that is responding to the Facebook advertising.
This is Tom. I mean, my sense is Facebook is getting like 10 times the number of eyeballs on items that Twitter does generally. I don't think it's just limited to your part of the country.
I went to a tourism bureau social media workshop, and they were gung ho on everything, and then they talked about really for this region that Facebook is queen.
Yeah.
And I do see that. And I mean, I think about my parents, and that their grandparents everywhere, they're on Facebook so they can see their grandchildren. So there's a whole different generation that's now picking it up. Just something to think about.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm glad to hear that what they said, what we said here echoed what they said.
Yeah, just means more work for me, but I appreciate it.
I've also started using Hootsuite, which lets you post something so simultaneously to I think Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter.
I haven't used that yet.
And it lets you schedule it. You can get you can use the free version for one account. That would probably suffice. There's also a program called Buffer which does the same thing. So you can actually stack up a number of posts that you schedule to go out over the course of a day or a week. It's a nice little free tool.
What was the other? I didn't know.
So
the other
Hootsuite is one, HOOTSUITE, and then the other is just called Buffer.
Buffer. That's what I haven't heard of. Okay. Great.
Any other questions? Well, thank you all.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I just had a quick question. So we've been talking about you spoke about, I think, Mark, visuals and using videos and that sort of thing, and I think that's something we'd like to do in the future. I'm wondering, in us trying to explain with a visual kind of what the platform is in general, do y'all have some sort of graphic? I remember seeing a brochure maybe from even before we got the platform that kind of described the capabilities of it. I'm just wondering, is that something that y'all have or that another platform has developed? Just because at least I find in our community it's hard for people to kind of grasp onto what it is.
Right.
And so I'm just wondering if there's any really helpful visuals that y'all have seen or have used.
So we certainly have PowerPoint presentations.
Right.
I know Sandy Scanelli in Brevard, I did give her a copy of our Microsoft Publisher brochure. This is from a couple of years ago, and then she took it and modified it to meet her needs. I'd be glad to send that to anybody who wants it also.
Okay, that'd be great.
I also know that Share New Mexico had worked on a few marketing pieces, and I think that they shared it a while back, so I can probably find it. They broke it down into something like top 5 reasons why Share New Mexico is good for you or is right for you or something like that.
Okay.
And so I think that they were tackling the same issue, that in some ways the platform can do so many things that it can be hard to tell someone why they should go there without talking for 5 minutes. So I think breaking it down into specific bullet points, even if that means not mentioning everything, and like you said, I think taking a visual, whether it's a screenshot or maybe using photographs of people volunteering in the community and linking that up with, you can use the volunteer opportunities or find a place to volunteer. I think using sort of action language, find a place to volunteer in your community, as opposed to you can look at listings of volunteer opportunities. That's helpful. And I think screenshots can be good of certain parts of the site, but I wouldn't rely too heavily on screenshots. I'd almost rather see, you know, a picture from a volunteer working at a pig roast is more interesting than a screenshot of the volunteer listing for that pig roast, for example.
Right,
but
absolutely.
we don't have things out of the box, and that's partially because each platform is very different, and platforms use different features. So we don't, but we've actually talked in the past about creating some sort of generic marketing materials that could be, you know, for lack of a better term, white labeled. You know, something that is missing the header, and each platform could add their header. So if it's something you're interested in, we can talk more about it offline, and I'm sure there would be a lot of value in it for other platforms. So maybe we can find a way that we can create some slightly generic information, and then you can customize it and use it, you know, how you want to.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks.
Anyone else? Well, thank you all very much for attending, and we will try to get back into a routine of having these monthly. Please give us your feedback on, you know, just if this was helpful or not, and what other topics you'd like to cover. So thank you, and have a great rest of the week, and